8 camp is in the books. I am Jason State here with the SF Niners OG Brad, Grant, and last cousin Jordan Elliott of Nation. Back in practice, guys. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I know
Uh,
Jordan's doing fantastic too.
yes, and Jordan looks fantastic. Look good, play good. Jordan's just been crushing it with the coverage, man. So, real quick, I guess the things that people want to know. Jalen Hurd practiced today, participated in 11 on 11s, caught his first pass. That's got to get everybody excited. D Ford practice 11 on 11s. He was in and out. He looked great today. Nick Bosa worked off on the side on 11 on 11s. Eric Armstead wasn't present today. So that's something that did we get any confirmation as a maintenance day or something to that effect for him?
I haven't seen anything personally.
Okay. Deebo Samuel was in there today. Emmanuel Mosley made his way back today. So let's start there, right? Because Tim Harris, who was waived, actually reverted back to the 49ers after he went unclaimed and ended back up on IR. That's been a big concern of mine is the cornerback 2 position. I understand that they've drafted Ambry Thomas, Diamador Lenore, got it after one good shot. And Ken Webster was there as well. But Emmanuel Mosley being there, it was something that is sorely needed for this defense. And he showed up right away with a PBU in one of his first reps. So, Brad, Jordan, do you guys have anything to add in terms of Emmanuel Mosley and what it brings to this defense?
He immediately looked better than every single other player who was taking reps in his place while he was out. Like, it was instant. Like, the first ball they threw at him in 11 on 11s, he stuck Deebo the whole way and got his hand out in front of the ball, broke up the pass. And it just was evident. They limited his reps a little bit because I think they're going to ease him back in, get him back, in good condition and all that. But he immediately, the difference was extremely evident the second that he took the field that it was his role that these guys were playing in place of. But it's very reassuring because that corner 2 spot was very concerning. And the second he stepped on the field, a lot of that worry was alleviated.
Yeah, and I think that was really fun to see because obviously this cornerback depth has been tested early and often all throughout camp, whether it's injury or players being placed on the reserve COVID list. And so to get Emmanuel Mosley back and then to see him tested early in team period against the ones, you had Deebo Samuel run a little out to the sideline, and Emmanuel Mosley did what he does. He seems to just sit in that back pocket of the wide receiver and just kind of wait. And then when the ball comes, he bursts and just uses that length of his to break up the pass. He was extremely hyped. It was right there in front of the defense on the sideline. Everyone was hyped. The fans were hyped. And it was just really good play to see Emmanuel Mosley again. And like Jordan said, you felt his presence right away.
Yeah, it's a big thing, and I'm so happy to see him there because it is a level of inconsistency with the guys behind him. Some good reps. Ambry Thomas actually had some good reps today, but that's been far and few between. So it's nice to see him there at cornerback 2. It's going to be a great help. Some other stuff that we saw in one-on-ones. Trey Sermon is not getting as much love for his receiving prowess. He was actually running really good routes, and he caught a deep shot on Dre Greenlaw, which is actually a beautiful ball thrown by Nate Sudfeld. That was really impressive. And I thought one of the more fascinating sequences around the one-on-one drills was Tavon Wilson against George Kittle. So the first rep, George Kittle does a George Kittle thing and, bullies his way in there and makes a nice catch on him. And then he comes right back, and Tavon Wilson kind of clamped him. If you guys remember that actual rep, and he ends up with a PBU. Do you guys want to elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things with that breakup is it's been similar to other ones that Tavon Wilson has done throughout the week. It appears that Kittle has been unguardable throughout practice, but the only player that is seemingly giving Kittle any type of fits has been Tavon Wilson. And he's done it in one-on-ones. He's done it in teams. And again, today had another extremely stout, was stout in coverage and then was able to be physical at the point of attack and get that ball out. So he's done that multiple times. is clearly proving he's not necessarily a one-hit wonder right away. So to see him stack these kinds of reps on multiple days has been really assuring for the defense as a whole.
Yeah, he is obviously going to have to take a much bigger role now that Tart will be out for an extended time, getting placed on the PUP list today. And I just think, excuse me, it's not the worst thing in the world, because I think if Tart was healthy, there would be a healthy competition at that spot. That's how good Wilson has been. And I just think that the 49ers are very fortunate that there was somebody to step in who's a veteran, who's had experience in this league that can fill that role until Tart gets back, or maybe he ends up hanging on to the job. Who knows how it plays out. But he's been by far one of the better guys in camp consistently day in and day out. There's been a few players who look really good one day and they don't look great the next day. There hasn't been a day where I've watched Tavon Wilson and I've been like, oh man, he's just getting eaten up in coverage, or oh man, he's over pursuing ball carriers, not being responsible for his gap assignments, anything like that. He's looked really good day in and day out. And I think he is one of the kind of under the radar storylines that hasn't been talked about enough, because he's just been phenomenal.
And not only did Emmanuel Mosley return to practice, Juwan Jennings returned to practice, and he was taking some first-team reps in the slot. Kyle is looking for this big slot no matter where he can get it. For a little while, it was Mohamed Sanu. Jalen Hurd fits in that profile too as well. He was actually in the slot. Juwan Jennings was in the slot. Probably caught the nicest pass of the day from one Jimmy Garoppolo also, with Jimmy Ward trailing a little bit. That was actually a really nice ball down the sideline. So we'll get to the quarterbacks, but the Emmanuel Mosley thing and the Jaquiski Tart thing, Tart off of COVID list, but right onto PUP. So obviously what's going on with him has little to do with, his battle with COVID and more about the toe. And that's still not coming along. So Tavon Wilson has been a really nice surprise and find. And he's filled in admirably and looked good. I want to throw it to you guys real quick before we get into, what everybody's here for. They want to hear about what happened with the quarterbacks today. But again, we get these glimpses of the first team defense and where they're aligned, how these looks are going to be. And there were some interesting looks today. I'll start with you, Brad. Did you see anything that caught your eyes? And then right after that to Jordan, and we'll go off that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jordan did a great job of starting to track the different alignments that D'Amico Ryans was putting out there in regards to defensive fronts, where the D linemen are lining up. And he did a really fantastic job of being able to chart it so we could see it. And one of the things you were seeing like Bosa and D Ford stacked on one side. You were seeing linebackers floating around the line of scrimmage. You were seeing defensive backs floating around the line of scrimmage. And that has been the consistent thing that we've seen out of these install periods with D'Amico Ryans and this defense. They are really going to mix it up front in regards to the different types of looks that you get. 49ers fans, of course, if you've watched this team since 2017, since Robert Saleh and Kyle Shanahan took over the offense and defense, the defense has been pretty vanilla for the most part, in the sense that they're typically bringing 4 defensive linemen, maybe a 5th, and a rusher, and that's about it. But what we're seeing is extremely exotic, in the sense of this defensive front is going to try and confuse opposing offenses as much as possible.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing that I would take away, is that the fronts that they're showing are just, I don't even know the word, innovative, creative, imaginative, and any kind of adjective you want to throw in there. They're running a lot of stuff that's just extremely different than I don't want to downplay it, because they had a lot of success. They've been a top 5 defense last year, but a lot of their schemes, particularly the pre-snap looks they gave, were very vanilla. And it seems that D'Amico Ryans is making a point to get these walkthroughs. They're doing it at the beginning of practice. The first team defense is out 10-15 minutes before each practice officially kicks off, doing these walkthroughs. And some of the looks that, just like Brad said, that they're giving, I would hate to be an offensive lineman or a quarterback having to diagnose this pre-snap, because they're doing all kinds of stuff where they're dropping down linemen into coverage. They're stacking edge players on the same side, running stunts with them. They had a really interesting rep during 11-on-11s where they had D Ford on his own over Mike Mcglinchey off to the left side, and then they had 3 guys off to the right, and they ran a stunt all the way around over to their left side, the defense's left side, to the right side of the offensive line with Jordan Willis. So he came all the way across the formation on a stunt. Mike Mcglinchey actually did a phenomenal job holding his own during this rep. I want to give Mike some love real quick because I know people aren't quick to do that these days, it seems like. But the look that they gave, it was tremendous, and it's really cool. They're not just running these crossing stunts like they ran when they had D Ford and Buckner and Bosa and Armstead a couple years ago. The looks are just extremely, I guess I would say unique. Like they're running a lot of stuff you don't really see run at the NFL level, and I think that this is where the genius of D'Amico Ryans is really going to flash. A guy who was always respected amongst his peers as a very heady, high football IQ player, and it's really. I'm not gonna lie, I love Kyle Shanahan. We're all blessed to be able to watch such a creative offensive mind. But D'Amico Ryans is slowly creeping up to the point where I've seen Kyle. Don't get me wrong. We're going to see a lot of cool stuff with him and Trey, but I'm almost more excited to see what D'Amico Ryans is going to cook up with this defense than what Kyle's going to cook up for Trey Lance in that offense.
Speaking of what Kyle is cooking up with that offense and Trey Lance, and before we get into his performance, I noticed we noticed something last practice where off to the side, it's Trey Lance with a running back next to him and Deebo Samuel to the right. So what's happening is that Deebo Samuel's running with the jet motion behind him. The zone read is there. He's pulling it in, and they're running option, triple option, speed option, which is just another wrinkle that they were looking to add, and they worked on it extensively today. Kyle Shanahan is just having a blast right now. It's like he's in a coloring book right now. He's just coloring outside of the lines. He's just like and this is something that they're implementing. And then you heard coach talk after practice today about, yes, you'll see him in week 1 with a package of plays, kind of the worst kept secret, and just basically confirmed everything that we had believed was going to happen. So that's some news that came out today as well. Jordan, Brad, I'll start with you, Brad. Did you see any of that or what that really means? Because there's that portion of the beginning of camp, the beginning of practice, that installations are happening. You're installing new ideas and talk about a little bit about what the pressure is on the defense to try to stop that.
Yeah, so the pressure that the zone read puts on the defense is immense because the defense is used to playing 11 on 10 football because they're not accounting for the quarterback. Now, when you have the threat of run from a quarterback, you have to account for that player. So it becomes true 11 on 11 football. And so then, of course, having a scheme-dependent head coach like Kyle Shanahan, he will be able to use that to his advantage in regards to number games, matchup, overloading one side versus the other. It's going to be pretty interesting to see what he does. But I think one of the biggest takeaways from that period that Jason was talking about was the fact that it was only Trey Lance doing that. There was not one other quarterback, not Jimmy Garoppolo, not Sudfeld, not Rosen, because they were also, not only were they doing the triple option work, but they were also just repping zone read handoffs, which is basically executing the mesh point and, that motion as well. But again, it's only Trey Lance that is doing it, and that has matched what has happened in team periods. Trey Lance is essentially the only quarterback that is running zone read and is the only one pulling it on zone read. So again, I think it's just fascinating to see. And while this is all happening, there's Kyle Shanahan with Trey Lance, with Deebo Samuel, and the running backs in their corner, and they're installing this scheme portion only by themselves. The quarterbacks on the opposite side of the field with the rest of the wide receivers, they're throwing against air. Meanwhile, it's Kyle Shanahan, Trey Lance, running backs, and Deebo Samuel, and they're installing. And none of those other quarterbacks even sniffed that area other than Sudfeld came to hang out at the end. But to me, that was the biggest takeaway, is that this is clearly only being installed for Trey Lance.
Yeah, and, I think that the biggest thing we need to take away is that, as much as Kyle can dial up a lot of stuff and Trey has his big arm, Kyle Shanahan's biggest strength, in my opinion, is his ability to scheme up really good running plays and his ability to design looks that it'll give the same look pre-snap, but he could throw 10 different things at you. And that's what gets so hard for these defenses, is that he'll run the same thing 3-4 times, but there's different variations of it. And that's what we saw with this option, speed option, kind of, triple option, whatever you want to call it. And, it's just, you got to think about it. If you're in the shoes of these defenders, if you don't respect the initial potential handoff to Raheem Mostert, we know how fast he has. He has track speed, all-world speed. You have to respect that. Then you have to respect Lance keeping. And then you have to also deal with Deebo Samuel coming around, who we know is an absolute battering ram with the ball in his hands. And it's not just that these guys are fast. They're also tough to bring down, and they're really, really good ball carriers. Like, that's one thing that I think is a super underrated trait of 49ers players. And another thing that's really special about Trey Lance is that these guys are so good at being patient enough to wait for their blocks to develop. So on a couple of these big chunk plays, there was a couple plays against the first team defense even today where they were breaking these huge running plays behind these massive holes behind the offensive line because these guys were patient enough to identify when their blocks were there. So I can't wait to see what they're going to do. Obviously, it's really fun watching Trey Lance throw the ball 55 yards down the field on a rope, but some of the stuff that he's going to be able to do with his legs will be as much, if not more, entertaining and fun to watch than it has been watching him throw the ball.
Absolutely. And I think that's where we'll start. We'll pick up the quarterback discussion today. So after 3 straight practices with Trey Lance of just oohing and eyeing, ripping off chunk runs, today was a little bit more subdued. And I don't want that to be misconstrued as bad day. Wasn't bad, wasn't great. This is expected from the rookie. I want to make sure I frame this correctly. I'm kind of happy that this happened today because some of the accuracy issues that we had talked about earlier, he was a little bit high. He was throwing a little bit behind. Yes, those are completions, but those are the things that we saw early on that he wasn't doing the last 3 practices. The reason that I'm kind of happy that this happened is because it pumps the brakes on everything. Right? Everybody's enamored with all the big plays and everything. And today, short stuff, he was hitting. He started 8 for 8. And the throw that we'll talk about is the first throw of his 11-on-11s, which was that deep shot to Travis Benjamin, which was double covered, but the ball made it there. Travis Benjamin did have to stop and come back and get it, but it still made its way over the head. Talk to me. I'll start with Jordan. Talk to me about what you saw about Trey Lance, and then we'll throw it to Brad, and then we'll bounce ideas off each other.
So the biggest thing with Trey Lance, I will say, so Trey Lance had such a good day Wednesday that it was going to be hard for him to put up that same performance. It was such a good performance that I didn't expect him to exceed or match it. And I don't think that he played bad. He definitely regressed a little bit. It was natural to expect because of how good he played. But the biggest thing with him that I would point out is that when he's missing guys, I've said it a few times, he tends to miss guys high. But the biggest thing with him is that when he's missing receivers in spots where if the receiver is going to go up and get it, they're really the only one that can make a play on it. So he's throwing it in front of them, high, to the sideline. He's not missing guys low or behind. So while it's frustrating at times, I imagine, especially for Shanahan and McDaniels and the guys calling the offense, there has to be some level of gratitude for the fact that even when he does miss, it's not a turnover-worthy play. It's just, hey, he missed high. And that, to me, is something that I think is done intentionally. I think, obviously, if Lance had his way, he'd be throwing the ball a little bit more accurately at these times. But there has to be something that's said for the fact that at least when he is missing, he's putting balls in places where only his receiver can get them. And that's one issue that I hate to say has kind of plagued Jimmy Garoppolo for a couple of years, is that when he misses low, he misses behind. He leaves balls in an area where the defender can make a play on it. They're not necessarily 50-50 balls, more so 30-70. The defender has a lot better chance of getting the ball. So that would be the biggest difference between the two, I feel like, is that just like Lance, when he's off, he's off. It's not great. He needs to clean up his accuracy. But he's not off in a way that's going to cost your team the possession or the ball, give the other team great field position, give them 6 points going back on a pick six. So I think that is one positive you could take away while highlighting some of his, I don't want to say negative, but some of his not so great plays from today. So that was the biggest thing that stood out to me, was he missed a lot of guys high in front of them. He threw a lot of balls to the sideline when guys were, outside the numbers, near the sideline. But again, I'd much rather see a guy miss where only the receiver can get it than have a ball low and behind that can be tipped up, picked, have the defender make a play on it, etc.
I think you make a fantastic point, Jordan, because I was just talking about this on the stream before, was that Jimmy, when he is making his deep shots down the field, he is missed more often than he's hit. And when he's missing by essentially underthrowing the football. And in 2 days in a row, on both of the deep shots that Jimmy has taken, he has gotten his wide receivers killed in the process because of underthrowing the passes, where his guys had a step on the defender. They were in stride, full speed, but were forced to come back to catch the football, and not just a back shoulder pass where you got to turn your body, but you literally have to stop your forward momentum and come backwards. Both times, each receiver has got planted on their back as a result. Brandon Ayuk tried to stop his momentum, come back to the ball, which meant he had to go through a full speed Jason Verrett to come and get the ball. And Jason Verrett put Brandon Ayuk straight on his back. That happened again today. Jimmy tried to throw it up down the right sideline to Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel had to stop and come back to it. He ended up on his back with the same exact situation, whereas Trey Lance is missing at times, but he's, again, it's missing in a way where only his guy has an opportunity to go get it, and if they're not getting it, no one's getting it. So those are one of the big differentiators between how they're missing. In regards to Trey Lance and his play on the field today, he didn't feel like he had the same rhythm as he had the previous 2 days before. It felt like the offense as a whole didn't have the same rhythm, because it felt like they were constantly rotating skill players, whereas we had kind of seen a pattern with the skills and which groups they're going out with. Today, it felt like a free-for-all in the sense of it was just constantly different groupings and different players out there on the wide set, because you had you had Juwan Jennings back, and there's just more guys added to the mix. So although Trey Lance didn't have his best practice today out of the week, there were still plenty of positives to take away, on top of things that you can see that he is going to continue to need to work on and develop in a certain direction.
Yeah, and I think that's the best way to put it. He just didn't have the same rhythm, didn't have the same juice, and that's fine. This is expected. Like I said, I'm glad that this happened. I'm glad, because we want to see how you deal with adversity. And I know this isn't in a game, but I want to see how you bounce back. And Lance, it didn't, for all intents and purposes, he didn't hang his head after any of these, anything like that. And again, Jordan makes a great point. None of them were turnover-worthy throws, right? So that's another thing that's important. Also, something to note, 2 fumbles today, but for what it's worth, they were both on zone read exchanges, and it felt like miscommunication between Lance and Gallman. So it's not like him running around and fumbling the ball or anything like that. So I just want to make sure the context is given on what happened with those, but they both happened with Wayne Gallman. They didn't seem to be on the same page of the, hey, if I'm pulling it out, don't grab the ball. Then it just ended up on the ground. I also wanted to point out Hufanga had a really nice day today as well. Had a very nice PBU out there, which is really good. You want to see that, especially because now the safety depth is going to be tested a lot more. But back to Trey Lance real quick. So I think that today we didn't really see too many of the chunk zone read plays or anything like that. And I kind of want to look at that as a good sign, because the second team defense was getting crushed. I'm talking about they couldn't do anything with it. That didn't seem to happen today, right? So you're not going to hit Trey Lance, but they had good angles. They had him in places where it wasn't chunk gains. Even on quarterback draws, there really wasn't much that he could do there with those. Did you guys see anything like that? And I'll start with Jordan here on this one.
No, I didn't really see. It wasn't as bad. They had the one big chunk play on the kind of speed option they ran with Deebo Samuel and Trey Lance. I think that went for like 20 yards. And the offensive line, it's crazy how shifty some of these guys are for how big they are. Big Mike was leading the way downfield, if I remember correctly. Trent Williams is really good getting to the second level as well. So definitely wasn't as bad today as it's been in terms of the defense getting gashed. But I also think that they've had time to adjust a little bit. I believe, if I remember, there was one play where Trey did keep, and he would have gotten tackled for a loss if they actually were hitting and tackling one another. But again, I think so much of it is just they were working on different things, is what I would say. I think they're working on different things a little bit today, and it's not like, oh, it's been figured out. All right, it's been 3 days, and the second team defense figured it out. I just think that they adjusted a little bit, and Kyle went away from kind of pressing the jugular, for lack of a better phrasing. Because the first couple of days when they were running it, it was like Kittle. Remember a couple years ago when he was like, run it again. Like, that's what it felt like with Kyle. They were having so much success running that zone read that they just kept doing it over and over and over again. But again, that's a play that, it's one of those things. Brad played the game. He knows it's one of those things where it doesn't matter if you're playing Pop Warner at the NFL. It's such a simple concept. There's really not much complexity to a zone read. It's just a matter of you have to have the talent to run it and have to have that threat as a runner and have to have a guy who identifies when to pull and keep it and when to put the ball in the running back's stomach. And Trey Lance is so good at that it's all, honestly, it's not something you can scheme for, but it's something that you almost actively have to be planning for down in and, every down that you're out there, because the second that you start to ignore it or think you have it figured out, that's when you get gashed for those big runs. 49ers fans, remember, that was kind of what the 49ers did in the playoffs the first year Colin Kaepernick took over the starting job. They really just kept pressing and pressing and pressing. And when teams started to bite on that zone read, that's when a lot of plays started opening up over the middle. And Lance is so good at going through his read. Just another thing I'd add about him real quick is he is so smooth going through his progressions, reading the field. There's so many times where you can see his eyes moving, and he's not staring down a single receiver. He's moving. If a guy's covered, he quickly goes to his next read. So the combination of defenses having to respect that zone read and that running ability, pretty soon you're going to start to see a lot of RPO stuff, a lot of play action, and a lot of things to get Lance on the move outside the pocket. So it's really honestly, we could sit here and honestly talk for 10 hours probably about all the different things they could do. I know we've the three of us have done that in the stands with some of the stuff that they've been running. It's very exciting to think that this is kind of like the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we've really gotten to see. And I can only imagine what they're going to start running once practices get closed down and the media is not allowed. When they start getting these practices going during the season, I can only imagine what Kyle's going to be cooking up over there.
Yeah, and I kind of think too that although the defense did have a better day today and they were doing a little bit better job of keeping contain of Trey Lance and some of the other things, I think it's important to note, because there's definitely a big conversation when Trey is successful about him playing against the second unit. But I also think there needs to be a conversation. I don't want to make it seem like I'm making excuses for Trey Lance either, but I also think it's warranted that he's playing behind the second team offensive line. And the drop-off between the first team and the second team is immense. And partially part of the reason why I feel like Brunskill was moved to center just for yesterday, because they were installing certain things and needed a competent center who could actually do what they needed him to do. So I think that's another part of it. Today, the second team, you're looking at an offensive line that has Tom Compton at right tackle. He's not a tackle. He's a guard. You got a rookie in Aaron Banks at right guard who's still getting his feet wet in the NFL. Jake Brendel at center at the 64. He has not been having a good camp, which is, again, why I alluded to why Brunskill, I think, was moved to back up center day in yesterday's practice. Then you have McKivitz at left guard and the rookie Jalen Moore at left tackle. So that second unit offensive line is insanely different than that first unit. And you're seeing the breakdowns on that line. You're seeing guys on that, because on the flip side of that, we are really deep on the defensive line. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things. The defensive line, the defense, they're taking step forwards. This is now the fifth day that they've had a really, really good look at the zone read, at all of those things. So they are taking their natural steps in progression of being able to cover these things. So not everything is created equal, but there are reasons for all of it. Again, Trey Lance had 2 fumbles, like Jason mentioned, but they were both to Wayne Gallman. And when you're running zone read and you're fumbling at the mesh, that is a combined kind of stat. Even though one will only get it, it's a combined situation. But for the most part, I think it's just a combination of things. This weird rhythm today. They weren't calling a bunch of shots. It seems like they were trying a bunch of different things. It actually felt like they were trying to be a bit more conservative today, whereas the last 2-3 days, it's like Kyle let it loose, and which is why I think everyone was getting super, super excited about what we were seeing, whereas today it felt like it got dialed back quite a bit.
Yep, I agree with that. And we're at 30 minutes, guys. If you're enjoying the content, please smash that like button. It'll help us out immensely. Subscribe to the channel, set the notifications on as well, too. So, yes, it did seem like that. When I was charting Trey Lance and we were looking, it was a lot of design screens. And to Jordan's point, he really worked the progressions well. There was 2 instances where he went 1, 2, and then 3 and found his guy immediately, got him the ball in the flat, which was Wayne Gallman. There was another time where it was 1, 2, 3. Okay, nothing's there, and he started to move, but he had someone in the flat and got the ball out too. So those are things that need to be highlighted. Those are the contexts. When you say 8 for 8, Very many of them, aside from that Travis Benjamin shot, were in that intermediate short range. But you kind of touched on it, and I'm going to start with you, Brad. I want you to talk about the first team O-line and what you noticed today. Who had good reps, who didn't, and who needs to work on some things, because I think everybody is really interested to figure out how this offensive line looks against this strong defensive front. Also, real quick, guys, I am not trying to gas it up at all. Dee Ford looks incredible. And what I mean by that is not just him being there on the field. That burst is back. He's got that bend. He's bull rushing guys. I'll let Brad take it from here.
Absolutely. And so starting with the offensive line, I think what we're seeing out of this unit is that they are an elite run blocking unit. When it comes to outside zone, inside zone, creating holes, moving massive men on the interior, these guys are doing it. Alex Mack is being able to dig out Kinlaw, being able to dig out Kentavious Street, any defensive tackle that they put on them on the interior where we had trouble in the past, they aren't having those issues. We saw multiple plays today where we looked at each other and we were like, whoa, you could drive a 18-wheeler through that hole. Like it was insane, some of the holes that this offensive line was opening up. But where we begin, and I think that also kind of is what we know about this unit. And in years past, they've always been extremely strong at run blocking. They're run-oriented, run first. And where we start to begin to see some struggle occur is in the pass protection. And we'll go left to right. Trent Williams, Laken Tomlinson, for the most part, they have been solid. Trent Williams doesn't really lose. He lost a rep today, but it's a rare loss. Laken Tomlinson, for the most part, he's about 80% completion. Like when it comes to winning pass protection reps from his position, I haven't seen Alex Mack lose more than maybe 2 or 3 times at all in general. Brunskill, he's still developing in that regard because, again, his biggest thing is being able to anchor at the line of scrimmage and hold his ground without getting pushed back. But Alex Mack has been doing a fantastic job at helping both his left and right guard in pass protection. And obviously when it comes to Mike Mcglinchey, this is where Mike Mcglinchey has been doing the large majority of his focus this year, is working on his technique, working on his depth, working on his explosion out of his snap. And again, you see it on some reps where you're like, oh, there it is. There's the explosion. There's the depth. There's the technique that we all want to see. But then you also see other instances like today against Dee Ford where it isn't as smooth and it isn't where he wants it to be. And Dee Ford kind of took advantage of that at certain times. So one of the things that we saw in succession today was with Mike Mcglinchey versus Dee Ford. Mike Mcglinchey has been really emphasizing his pass set and get out of his pass set to help making sure he doesn't get beat outside, essentially. That's what he's really, really been working on. So when he's been doing that, defenders will key on that and start to either bull rush or work inside counter moves. And that's exactly what Dee Ford did today. He knew Mike Mcglinchey was going to set up outside speed, and that's exactly what Dee Ford did. He hit Mike Mcglinchey with a straight bull rush. Mcglinchey, unfortunately, got his pads too high, and then that didn't allow him to anchor and basically stop his momentum from moving backwards. So Dee Ford got a really, really solid rep there. And then Dee Ford came right back, set up outside speed, hit a counter inside, and won again. You also saw other instances where McGlinch won against Arden Key. He had some really good run blocking reps and other things like that. But that's where Mike Mcglinchey will continue to work this offseason. And I think it's fantastic that Dee Ford is showing the partially his old self, because it's only going to make Mike Mcglinchey better and allow him to work on those types of things, because that's what he needs the most help in.
Yeah, I mean, Brad pretty much touched on it. There's not really much I can add. The only other thing I would add is that it seems to be like a consistency thing with McGlinchey. Like he had a couple really good pass blocking reps today. He just had some other ones that were really bad. And I'll be honest, Dee Ford one-on-one. Let's focus on the positive. Dee Ford looks really good, so that's what I'm going to choose to look at. But he consistently was giving McGlinchey the business, and it wasn't just the same move over and over. He started with that outside speed rush, and then he started hitting him with a bull rush. Then he started working inside. He hit him with a little stutter, and I need to see more before I can pin it one way or the other. I just think Ford had his number today, but I also am concerned that as good as D Ford has looked, how much of it is him just looking phenomenal versus Mcglinchey struggling with a couple of this. It's that same outside speed rush that's been getting him for years. If he loses that first step off the line, he does not do a good job of recovering. But he has looked better when guys have tried to bull rush him. D Ford did get him a couple times, but I think that added weight has helped significantly. And again, he looks so good throwing blocks at the first and second level, moving in open space when he's run blocking, that I think as long as he can just be average, it doesn't have to be great. If he can just be average as a pass blocker, he'll still be such a valuable asset because of what he brings to the running game. He just can't be a liability, especially with how good Alex Mack has made the guard positions next to him look. And we obviously know I think Trent Williams is the best player on the team too. While we're talking a line, I'll throw that out there. He is just so good. It is unreal how rare it is to watch this guy get beat. I think I saw him get beat twice today, and I could probably count on both hands how many times we've seen him get beat in 8 days of training camp. And it's just you can't get to a position where Mike Mcglinchey is such a weak link that defensive coordinators are actively exploiting a weakness when the other 4 positions are really playing at minimum at an average level, with Mack and Williams playing at a significantly above average level.
Let's go, girls.
Yep, definitely glad to get your insights there with that one. I also want to point out the running game was sharp today, whether that was Raheem Mostert or Trey Sermon. Like Brad alluded to, there were holes that you could drive a Mack truck through. Deebo Samuel got a jet sweep with a rep on Jimmy, and there was no one near him, and it was the jet sweep behind, and Jimmy gives one of those and just drops it off the other way, and that almost seems like it's going to be unstoppable. So I guess that's where we should move into with Jimmy Garoppolo. And for a lot of questions that I see in the chat, Juwan Jennings took a lot of slot reps today with first, with second, with third teams. Same thing with Jalen Hurd. Mohamed Sanu has kind of tapered off. Trent Sherfield wasn't really too much of a factor today. I believe he had 1 or 2 catches. So this is still ongoing. This is still very fluid what's going to be happening with the wide receiver 3 position and where it's going to be. It's quite obvious that Kyle Shanahan wants a big slot. That's why Juwan Jennings is massive. And you can see it already where he is right there. Made an amazing catch today too as well. But let's talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. So today, Jimmy Garoppolo was, I hate to keep saying this and I hate to keep being redundant, but Jimmy Garoppolo was Jimmy Garoppolo. Quick throws, he pushed the ball down the field 1 or 2 times. The one time that Brad alluded to was up the sideline of Deebo Samuel. It was underthrown. Deebo Samuel had to try to get back through the cornerback and it hit him in the back. Some other throws that were thrown at guys' feet. But then there's times where you see throws that are quick, decisive, and you're like, there it is. So it's really hard to, I guess it's really hard to evaluate at this point because Jimmy Garoppolo just is who he is at this point. He did kind of struggle towards the end with some misses. I mean, he threw one into Kittle over the middle where there was 3 guys around. Outside the numbers, he put one on Deebo Samuel. That was a really nice throw. There was another one where there was instant pressure. Literally nothing the guy could do. As soon as the ball was hiked, he had guys in his face. And then the fourth one was that Deebo shot up the sideline. This is just one specific period. But I'll start with you, Brad. Talk to me about what you saw from Jimmy Garoppolo today. And let's dispel a narrative that Jimmy Garoppolo is playing lights out, because that's not how I would describe it being in practice all these days.
I think when you say Jimmy Garoppolo is playing lights out, at least from what we're hearing from certain media members and general managers, there's context involved in what lights out, because when they go on to preface what they're saying saying that in regards to how Jimmy Garoppolo has looked in camp the past 4 years. Jimmy Garoppolo, by all accounts, apparently isn't the best practice player from everything that we've heard. So the things that we're hearing from John Lynch is that he is playing lights out compared to how he's played in the past. It just feels really interesting in that regard, because when we're watching and we're seeing what Jimmy Garoppolo is doing on the field, he's doing everything that we've come to know from Jimmy. If the first read is there, he has the ability to hit it with timing. He has the ability to hit it with accuracy, and he does it more often than not. Where we start to get a little bit concerned is when those first reads aren't there. When the timing isn't there, let's say a wide receiver gets jammed at the line of scrimmage and they're not able to to get the free release like they would have hoped. And he is forced to go to his second and third reads. Like you talked about with Trey Lance, we're seeing him have a pretty fluid ability, and seems like there's timing involved with how Trey Lance moved through his reads. We're still kind of seeing a bit of that hesitation out of Jimmy, a bit of just looking a little bit uncomfortable when things do break down, when the pocket starts to collapse around him. You start to see that Jimmy where he feels a little panicked, feels a little rushed. Like I said, when Jimmy's making his reads, he's hitting with timing. He's pretty accurate for the most part. But again, he's still hitting short to intermediate. I'm not sure if he really completed a pass today over 25 yards. And if he does, it's a one-off, at least so far the 4 days that I've been at practice. So again, when we hear the comment, he's been playing lights out, I think what they're trying to say, he's been playing lights out in regards to how he's played in the past. And I don't want to take it as an insult, from the people who are saying this, because what we're seeing, I wouldn't quantify as playing lights out. I'm seeing pretty average quarterback play from Jimmy Garoppolo. So it's, again, we know what game is being played upstairs with the 49ers right now, and I think we'll leave it at that. But in regards to the actual play on the field, I think it's pretty standard Jimmy Garoppolo play. Again, he's hitting passes, he's being accurate, he's hitting on timing. It's just when he doesn't, and when he's being inconsistent is when it stands out the most.
Yeah, Jimmy, it's weird because he hasn't had a bad camp by any means. Everything that I've seen from him in terms of stuff that would be negative, it's stuff that we've already seen from him. Like, nothing's changed. He's not regressing. He's not developing new habits that are bad. It's more just like Brad said. He's not great at improvising if his primary read isn't there. He's obviously not going to buy time too frequently with his legs. He's not really a plus athlete. His arm isn't anything special. So if you take away the middle of the field and you take away his ability to utilize that quick release he has, he's not somebody who's going to blow you away with the other stuff. But he's had a solid camp. I think he's been more than fine. I think Trey Lance has been phenomenal. I wouldn't have any objections if Kyle was like, I feel more comfortable with Jimmy starting right now, just based on how they played. I said before a couple days ago that I thought that they were both so close that the only thing that really was separating them was Lance's running ability. While Lance, like I said, Lance has the better arm. I get it. He has the more flat. He has the ability to put more velocity on it. There's times where he's throwing with better touch. But Jimmy has had some of the most impressive throws that I've seen this camp. And another thing I'd point out is he's playing without his knee brace too. He had a nice little scramble today off a play action bootleg. Nothing was open downfield. He scrambled for maybe 15, 20 yards. And I think that he's playing a little bit more free without that knee brace. And maybe he's more comfortable now, a couple years removed from that ACL injury, because I think that those knee braces really are a bigger deal than they're made out to be. I think that I'm trying to think, like it hinders him, I think, enough that him not having it it's almost as big for the mental aspect of it, where he's comfortable enough to go out there without it, than it is any physical limitation from the knee brace itself. So I don't want to read too much into it, but I think that he is a guy who today looked more confident. Like I said yesterday, I think, or the day before we did the stream, that he has nothing to really lose. Like his time, there's nothing he can do. He can go out and be an MVP this year, and he's still going to get traded at some point. Like Trey Lance is the future, so he might as well go out letting the ball rip. And he looked like a guy today that was much more comfortable and went out there and just sort of played without overthinking. So if he can play like that more often, I think that he has a much better chance of hanging on to that job for a good portion of the season.
Right, and one thing I don't want to really understate is that Jimmy Garoppolo does have a very strong mastery of this offense, right? The protections, he knows how to. He's been doing that pretty well. I believe that it was reported he checked out of a play that ended up in a big gain. Raheem Mostert would have had a touchdown on one of the runs that he took with the first team reps. Jalen Hurd actually took a first team rep today. I don't know what that means, but I'll tell you this: with Trey Lance not taking first team reps, it's less about who he's taking them with, because if you notice during when he's on with second team, you will see Deebo Samuel, you will see Brandon Ayuk, you will see George Kittle floating in and out. That's to develop some sort of chemistry with those guys. But Jordan made a great point yesterday when we were talking off the air. First team reps aren't going to necessarily be divvied up that way until he gets behind the first team O-line. As he can do all those second team reps with Brandon Ayuk, with George Kittle, with Deebo Samuel, even Raheem Mostert at times, but it's not really going to be labeled a first team rep until he gets behind that offensive line. So today was a lot more subdued. It seemed like everything was very much conservative, a lot of design screens. He worked his progressions. There's a lot of good for both of these guys. We're talking about Trey with Jimmy as well, too. He just is who he is at this point. If he sees it, he can throw it. He'll let it rip. Appreciate the donation, Brian. That means a lot. And, it really just boils down to who Jimmy Garoppolo is and expectations. Did you expect, something like a huge jump? I expected him to be solid in what he does and be more consistent. The only thing that's really been consistent about Jimmy Garoppolo across his camp is that he's been inconsistent, if that makes any sense. Like Jordan said, he's made some of the best throws in camp, and he still can let it, fly down the field. But the running game kind of took over today. They were installing a lot more of that when he was on the field as well. And, with Trey, it was a lot of quick stuff, and he did hit that one throw to Travis Benjamin. But aside from that, it's pretty much what you expect at this point. Jimmy Ward was great. Jason Verrett was great. Dre Greenlaw had some great run stops today. He was flashing all over the field as well, too. That Emmanuel Mosley pass breakup has to be exciting because it is going to get a little hairy when it comes to the cornerback depth there. And I think that we've kind of touched on everything. We're at 45 minutes here. Unless either of you guys have something else that you want to discuss, we can end it here. Thank you guys for tuning in again. Just make sure you hit like, make sure you subscribe. Brad, Jordan, do you have anything else that you want to talk about? Brad, you go first.
Just really quick to wrap up and put a bow on the kind of quarterback topic. I think for fans, what we're looking for is, are we seeing 2017 Jimmy or are we seeing 2020 Jimmy? And I would have to say that with what we've seen in camp, at least what I've seen in the past 4 days, we are seeing closer to 2020 Jimmy than I think the Jimmy that a lot of us really fell in love with, in the sense that a guy who was playing clear, calm, concise, very deliberate, being able to escape the pocket, make plays, do all different kinds of things. Again, you go back to the Jaguars game at Levi Stadium, him rolling out to his left, side-arming to Trent Taylor with Jalen Ramsey in coverage. You go back to those plays and those moments where people really bonded with Jimmy Garoppolo and just saw this potential franchise quarterback. And I think the biggest thing is, ever since he's tore his ACL and has been trying to come back, he just hasn't been able to get back to that level, or at least type of level that we saw in 2017. And if you want to use that as the measuring stick, is it 2017 Jimmy or is it 2020 Jimmy? This lights out Jimmy that we're seeing is closer to 2020 Jimmy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say one thing I would just add real quick. Jalen Jennings was out there. He's big, man. He definitely, his size is very noticeable. He was getting a lot of run in that slot position, and we know how much Kyle likes those big slot receivers. So I think he's a guy to keep an eye on moving forward, because I think that after you get past Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, and Trent Sherfield's kind of working his way into a lock for the roster, in my opinion. But beyond those three, there hasn't really been anybody that's separated from the pack. So I think Jalen Jennings is a guy to watch. I think he's putting himself in a pretty good position to make the team. And then Jonas Griffith is another guy I wanted to talk about just real fast. He's a linebacker who has been getting a lot more run, especially now. Al-Shair's out, so Flanagan felt, they're each moving up the depth chart one spot while he is out with that knee injury. And today he was taking first-team reps with the kick coverage unit. So he's clearly they're looking how he's going to look in special teams, because if you're going to take that depth role, you need to be able to contribute on special teams as well. But he's a guy who's really impressed me during camps. He's had a lot of great plays during 11-on-11s. He had the first infamous pick of Trey Lance during 11-on-11s as well. So Jonas Griffith is a guy. I know it's fun to talk about quarterbacks and all the superstars on the team, but there are 90 guys out there, and there's a lot of guys who aren't getting a lot of praise. And I think Jonas Griffith is a guy who's looked phenomenal, and he deserves a little bit of love, as I think he is working his way towards a roster spot on this team.
Good call. Good call. So 50 minutes, I think we can call it here. Brad, Jordan, I am going to miss you guys. You guys are going to Dwight Clark Day tomorrow. We will tap in with a stream. So these guys will be bringing you what happened in practice. I won't be there. I have to get back to the East Coast. I miss my daughter. But good news, if you guys didn't know, we will be back covering the joint practices with the LA Chargers. And that's going to be a lot of fun, and that game. So that's where we'll be at in about 2 weeks. I'm going to go home, rest up for a little bit, make sure that I tap in with these guys, as many practices as they get to, and I'll be right back out there for those joint practices so we can find out where this team is really at. Guys, this has been an experience that I'll never forget. I'm so happy that we were able to do this, the three of us. I couldn't have done it with anybody better. And this is something I'm never going to forget, man. And this has been an amazing time. And to see the love that you two are getting right now, a lot all over the internet right now with your coverage, your articles, your lives, it just makes me happy to know that all three of us were able to do this together. And I couldn't have picked two better people to do this with.
Bro, Jason, thank you for having me on the stream and doing this together. And again, to echo, I think we've all had a fantastic time covering training camp. I've been glad that I've been able to link up with you two. You guys are to the moon. Jason's on 95.7 The Game here in the Bay Area. Everyone's taking pictures with Jason. Jordan's getting recognized today at practice. It's been a lot of fun, and it's been such a rewarding experience. And like you said, Jason, I couldn't imagine doing this with anyone else other than you two guys.
Yeah, it's been a great week. I've had a lot of fun. I'll be honest, it'll be nice to return to a normal, quiet life after being around two celebrities. I can't tell you, I'm not even joking, guys, how many people have come up to these two and asked for pictures. A car drove by while we were walking down the street in Santa Clara and recognized Jason from his podcast. He had people yelling out the window of their car driving by at him. So as much as I like to, see my guys getting love, I also would like to get back to a normal life of privacy. So it'll be nice not to be around celebrities who are getting, a lot of love. And I know they appreciate the love from the people showing it to them, but I'm just saying, after a while it gets a little tiresome with the, fans constantly coming up to these guys. So it'll be nice to get back to normal.
Good looking, smart, and humble. That's Jordan Elliott in a nutshell, guys. So, we're going to get to writing our articles, so make sure you check those out. And I will be tapping in with a stream with these guys tomorrow after Dwight Clark Day. It'll just be a little bit later on my time. I don't land back on the East Coast till nearly 6 o'clock. So look out for that around 5:30 Pacific time, 8:30 Eastern time. So for Brad, for Jordan, for Jason, we're out of here, and go Niners.